United 1111, contact Denver Center 135.12. I'm going to make that United 111, contact Denver Center 135.12.
Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Harrington, call sign Harry, that's my dad, at least until he retired, and then he became retired Lieutenant Colonel Harrington. He worked for the South Dakota Air Guard as a fighter pilot, flying F-16s. After about 20 years, he decided to call it quits, retire, and spend his last few hours in his beloved warbird. Since he worked for a state militia and not the National Air Force, my dad was only deployed once, and during that time he ran reconnaissance missions over Iraq. Granted, there wasn't much intel you could gather going Mach 2, but it still helped the guys on the ground to know that there's a $75 million fighter jet that had their back. My dad would always tell us how awesome it was to hear the infantry on the ground breathe that deep sigh of relief whenever he did a flyby. Members of a squadron always held a party for those who were moving on, and as a ceremonial tradition, pilots always got to take one last flight with their airplane. My dad got lucky. When he retired, his aircraft was going to be recycled into a new F-16, meaning that a squadron commander thought that it was a nice going-away gift for him to get the joystick and tail of my dad's airplane, complete with my dad's own personal paint jobs. These are still on display in our house, and I don't think there could ever be a better gift to give him. My dad had his final flight in June of 2011. Everyone is invited out on the runways to see the pilot off, including his family, which just so happened to be me. Unfortunately, because his airplane was being ripped apart, my dad had to fly in his friend's bird, but he didn't mind. It was a perfect day, with just enough clouds to hide in. Most of the squadron got in their jets, fired up the engines, and took off. One of the coolest and most satisfyingly painful sounds anyone can ever hear is 8 fighter jets taking off one after another from less than 100 yards away. Just being immature 40-year-olds with the most powerful combat aircraft known to man at their disposal, my dad and his mates began to have some fun, do some maneuvers, and have laser dogfights in the air above us. This was very cool. 4 versus 4 dogfights are something very few people will ever get to see, and usually they're just a few simple jet maneuvers and then they're over, but not this time. As I found out later, the squadron had plays that they ran, coordinated defensive and offensive attacks while in the air. One of the most fun plays we got to see was called the Exploding Cantaloupe. That was the official name for it. What would happen is the 4 planes would line up information and fly straight at the enemy. As soon as the first missiles were fired from the enemy, things got crazy. The first fighter would go down, while the second fighter would go up. The other 2 on the outside would invert and flip inwards. The missiles would sail right past the guys because there were too many targets to hit, and from the ground it looked much like a melon exploding, hence the name. The Allied jets would return to formation behind the enemy fighters and take them out. We got to see this more than once on that hot summer day. There were countless other plays that the squadron ran, but that one was my dad's favorite. As the fuel levels ran low and the sun even lower, the guys came in for a landing. Everyone was clapping and cheering and congratulating my dad, and he even got a few bottles of champagne poured on him. Being an 11-year-old, I wasn't allowed into the party, but I heard it was a good one. As our family loaded up in the car to go home, we realized that my dad was not with us. In the end, we found him. Sitting all alone on the edge of the airstrip, my dad had a very unusual look on his face. It was a look of longing, a look of regret. Staring at the fighter jets all lined up with the sunset at their backs and their wings spread wide, I knew what my dad was thinking. He would never get to see this sight ever again. He would never get to feel those incredible speeds, never get to fly with some of his best friends, never get to be all alone over the ocean or the mountains or the plains of Iowa and just get to take in the view. This is one of the looks you never get to see on my dad, the look of sadness.